So today I thought I would talk about something a little bit different, which is Doki Doki Literature Club Plus for the Nintendo Switch. Um, so this is a visual novel, and I own actually three visual novels, although these two are still sealed. Have not even done anything with them. This was the only one I've tried, and so it's my first visual novel. It was kind of cheap on Amazon, so I thought I'd pick it up because it was getting some pretty good reviews, and there was some interesting buzz about it. So what is it? It's a Japanese dating simulator, and so you can see there the four girls that I'm interested in, seeing which one I want to date. No, it is a psychological horror. In fact, it's described. This is on Wikipedia. It's described as a metafictional psychological horror. And it says in there, its gameplay has a low level of interactivity and consists of scenes with static two-dimensional images of characters in first-person perspective, accompanied by occasional choices the player is forced to make in order to advance the plot. So even though you make choices, the plot is going to do what it's going to do. Just as with any novel, you cannot direct the story to go in any direction other than the way it's going to go. It features images, static images, but it is a story. And so what's interesting about it is, let me back up for a second here. I'm going to give spoilers, but I don't consider them spoilers because you can't get into the game without going and experiencing what the game is going to tell you at the beginning, which is a whole bunch of trigger warnings. Basically, it says, do not have children play this, young children. And among the other trigger warnings, it says, if you have suicidal thoughts, don't play this game, or maybe think twice. So I don't consider it spoilers because, like I said, you would, unless you just simply ignore any of those trigger warnings and click past them, you're gonna find out. And it would be cruel to have somebody play this game and tell them it's a dating simulator, and then not have them aware of what's going to happen in the game. So your friend here, I can't remember her name, but no, I'm sorry. I think it's this girl here. She introduces you to the Doki Doki Literature Club. She wants you to become a member. And it's all girls, four girls total. And they just basically write poetry. And so that's what you do. You sit there and you can't really write a poem, but you can choose words. And even though it seems like maybe you're kind of choosing between the girls, you can't really make any decisions. And so this goes on for several hours of playtime, which is just writing poetry, interacting with the girls. And one of the things I'll say about this game is that if you really don't want to play a dating simulator, that's what it is for several hours. And it is all a setup. Okay, so you might get bored for a while. And my young daughter was watching it, and she actually wanted to play it, and she got really bored and just quit. But I knew what was going to happen, so I stayed with it. And at some point, you determine or you discover that your friend who introduced you to the club suffers from depression. And you find out that her depression is far deeper than you had possibly imagined. And so the interest you have in these other girls has exasperated her depression. And so you kind of, given the trigger warnings, given everything that's gone on, you know what's going to happen. And it's like a train coming at you, and you can't stop it. There's no way to get out of the way. And so when that moment comes, it is such a gut punch. I've never experienced it in any other, I'll say game, even though it's a visual novel. I've never experienced that in any other game that I've ever played on any system. When it happens, I was like, whoa. And then the game's over. And I was like, oh my God. I was just floored at that moment. So what I'm going to get into is a bit more of the spoilers. And if you haven't played the game and you want to play the game without, finding out what happens, I'm going to avoid the bigger spoilers, but I'm going to reveal some of the stuff. You could just not continue this video because I am going to give away some stuff. So basically, you start the game over again. It's the same, except that your friend here no longer exists. She's not dead. She's never existed. And so you play through the game again without her being in reality. And this time through, things are different. And this is when the psychological horror kicks in, because there's just little things going on. During the game, there's just cute images, cute songs, everything's cutesy, and things are not right anymore. Something is definitely wrong. The songs will be playing, but there'll be notes that are out of tune, just little tiny things. Or maybe the camera will be slightly tilted. But also the girls, they had some fights early in the first run through, but now those fights get much more vicious. I'm talking verbal fights, but things are different. And it gets creepy. It's not in your face. It's not jump scares. Or some of them maybe it could be considered jump scares. But it's just an overall uneasiness. And I will say this for the game. Visual novel. I really enjoyed it. I don't regret playing it. But I will say that I think the ending sort of diminished what happened earlier a little bit. There was a path that I thought the story was going down, and that's not the path that it went down. Okay? That's all I'll say, is that what happens at the end of the game is unexpected. And why your friend has simply vanished from reality is explained. And I think it kind of diminished, like I said, what happened earlier. And I didn't love that part of it. But beyond the psychological horror, it also says metafictional. And so that, it's sort of putting you in the game. And it's very interesting the way they do that. So I definitely recommend it. You might find yourself bored through the first half of the game. And then once the psychological horror kicks in. Now, I will say one thing. For a visual novel, I ended up having to go on an FAQ site to figure out what to do, because I got stuck, which is probably a really weird thing to say for a visual novel, that I got stuck in it. But and that kind of disappointed me in that it sort of took me out of the metafiction a little bit, in that I'm now looking up how to continue in the game. But I did get stuck. I believe this is a Western-made game. The names of the people involved in it who designed it are Western names. So I think it's all meant to emulate a Japanese dating simulator, but it is not a Japanese simulator. And so one of the things they've said about this one is that actually for a visual novel, it's quite short. So it's more like 4 or 5 hours, maybe. Whereas I guess maybe a little bit longer. But I guess some of these visual novels can run into 40 hours or so. So anyway, I do recommend the game. If for nothing else, then it probably had one of the most memorable moments I've ever experienced in a video game. Even though it was a very horrifying moment, it really hit me hard. So that's kind of interesting But I do recommend the game. I do highly recommend it. And like I said, when I bought this, it was fairly cheap on Amazon. So it does have its roots are PC, and it was originally a free game. So I've seen people complain about why am I paying whatever X amount of thirty bucks for a game that was originally free. But it does have the plus in there. But I don't think it adds that much. But I like having it. I like having the physical copies. So anyway, that's Doki Doki Literature Club Plus for the Nintendo Switch.